Hey guys, tonight we walk across something that really shouldn't exist, at least not in a way that works, holds weight, and doesn't immediately plummet you into a canyon full of your own regret. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff in the high Andes. The wind bites a little. Below, a raging river roars like it's been angry for centuries. And what's connecting you to the other side? A handmade bridge of twisted grass. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fun seeing who's falling asleep from where. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You place one foot forward, the bridge creaks. Not a metal creak, more of a plant holding its breath kind of creak. Your toes press into thick coils of ichu grass, twisted and layered into thick ropes. Beneath them, well, not much except thin air and a several 100-foot drop to some jagged rocks and a turbulent river that hasn't lost a staring contest in 10,000 years. Welcome to the world of the Inca rope bridges, known as eswachaka, a network of what might be the most anxiety-inducing marvels of civil engineering you've never tried crossing. These things weren't just cute little Indiana Jones props. They were crucial arteries in the vast circulatory system of the Inca Empire. At its height, the Inca civilization managed a road system. Yes, literal roads, stretching over 25,000 miles across one of the world's most brutal landscapes. Mountains, valleys, rivers, all connected by dirt paths, stone steps, and, here it is, rope bridges made from grass. You know, that stuff your lawnmower cries over? You grip the side rail. It's not a rail so much as a second set of ropes, taut and sun-bleached, just high enough to make you feel better, while still low enough to do absolutely nothing. If things go south, this entire contraption is hanging by tension, gravity, and thousands of years of stubborn indigenous engineering. And don't get it twisted, this wasn't some last-minute workaround. The Inca designed it this way on purpose. The empire's terrain was vicious, and stone bridges weren't always practical. Grass ropes, meanwhile, could be renewed annually, customized to each site, and, most importantly, made entirely with local resources. Historians still argue whether the true genius lay in the material itself or the knowledge passed down orally through generations. But what's certain is that this wasn't your average campcraft lashing. The ropes used could be up to 200 feet long, with a diameter thick enough to require actual teams of men to lift. And they weren't made in one go. They were braided from thinner cords, which were braided from still thinner fibers in a recursive loop of botanical engineering that would make any modern cable designer sweat. You lean over and spot the anchor points on either end. The bridge is tied, no, embedded, into massive stone abutments carved into the mountain itself. No nails, no bolts, just rope tension and gravity. Oh, and ritual. Lots of ritual, but we'll get to that later. Every step bounces, like you're walking on a firm hammock, made by people who take their hammocks a little asterisk, two asterisk. Seriously, birds dart below, indifferent to your very real need to not fall to your doom. There's a moment when the entire bridge groans with your weight, and just for a second, you swear it's talking to you, judging you, probably asking why you didn't just walk around. Fun fact, the Inca had no written language. That means everything about these bridges, design, construction, maintenance, was passed down by demonstration, repetition, and oral storytelling. It's like if your grandpa taught you how to fix your car, but instead of a car, it's a bridge over a murder canyon. And here's the kicker, they actually worked. The bridges could support entire caravans of people, llamas, and goods. Spanish conquistadors, who arrived thinking they were the advanced ones, took one look at these structures and basically said, nah, building makeshift wooden platforms across them just to feel better about not dying. Still, some did cross them the original way. In 1553, a Spanish traveler named Pedro Cieza de Leon described the experience of walking across a rope bridge in Peru, and he did not sound thrilled. He wrote that it moved so much, even without wind, that it was enough to terrify any man, no matter how brave. His words, not mine. Well, mine now, but you get the idea. Some fringe researchers even argue that the bridges were intentionally designed to scare you a bit, to keep enemies on edge, to humble the arrogant, or just to remind everyone that the Earth always wins if you get cocky. That part, unconfirmed, but admit it, it tracks. You're about halfway across now. You pause, feeling the rhythmic sway of the bridge in the mountain air. Every oscillation feels alive. The chords hum with a barely perceptible vibration, like the bridge has a heartbeat. Maybe it does. In a weird way, you're not just walking across a structure. You're stepping through a legacy of craftsmanship, necessity, and quiet brilliance. Every fiber has been handled, twisted, and knotted by someone who learned from someone else, going back so far that the names are lost, but the method remains. The modern world doesn't build things like this anymore. Everything's steel, concrete, and standardized safety codes, which is good, unless you're trying to feel something, unless you want to know what it's like to trust your life to grass and gravity and hands long gone. Keep going. Just a few more steps. The bridge creaks again like it's sighing in approval, or maybe in annoyance. You're not quite sure. Either way, you're across. You touch solid ground again, and your knees feel like they've been turned to jelly by the world's most sustainable anxiety machine. But there's no time to celebrate. You glance back at the bridge, still swaying gently, and wonder, asterisk, who built this thing? Like actually asterisk, who asterisk? Turns out, the answer is everyone. In the Inca world, building a rope bridge wasn't some niche job for an elite team of engineers with clipboards and lunch breaks. It was a full-blown community event, somewhere between a construction site, a family reunion, and a deeply spiritual rave, minus the glow sticks. You look around the imaginary Andean village that's suddenly materialized in your mind. It's morning. The sun's creeping over the peaks. There's the scent of toasted maize in the air and distant laughter echoing down the valley. And in the center of it all, people are already hard at work weaving something that looks like a vine on steroids. Here's how it usually went. Each family in the local village had a responsibility to produce a specific amount of rope, called asterisk koya asterisk, not in theory, in literal arm's lengths. You mess it up, the bridge messes up. And then, well, gravity does gravity things. So people took it seriously. Even kids helped. Not with the dangerous stuff, obviously, but with the prep. Harvesting ichu grass from the high plains, drying it, twisting the fibers, and helping form the base cords. And it wasn't just manual labor. No one woke up and said, "Ah, another day of rope twisting." This was sacred work. People fasted beforehand. They prayed. Some would even avoid certain foods or behaviors in the days leading up to it, like bridge monks, trying to keep the karma of the construction pure. Historians still argue whether this ritualistic layer was more about religion or just high-stakes quality control disguised as spirituality, but either way, the results were undeniably solid. Imagine braiding something so well that it can hold a llama caravan over a canyon and still last up to a year before needing to be replaced. And they had asterisk to replace it. These bridges weren't meant to last forever. That's part of what makes them so magical. They were temporary by design, organic, mortal, kind of like the people who made them. So how did they actually build them? Let's walk back into that scene, shall we? First, they'd anchor enormous ropes, sometimes as thick as a grown man's thigh, to both sides of the canyon. These were the main structural lines, and getting them across was complicated. Sometimes they'd tie smaller ropes to stones and sling them across with slingshots, or throw them using long poles. Other times, they'd use rafts to ferry lines across the water below, or even brave swimmers, though that last one was rare because, well, have you seen the rivers in the Andes? Once the base ropes were across and secured into the rock-carved abutments, they'd begin weaving the bridge itself. Think of it like a giant basket, except horizontal and stretched across a deadly gap. The floor, the railings, the side supports, all were intricately interlaced, and everything had to be tight asterisk. No loose threads, no slop. You couldn't afford to wing it halfway through and hope for the best. If one piece sagged or snapped, the whole structure could fail. There was no blueprint, no instruction manual, just centuries of collective memory, skills passed down from parents to children, woven like the ropes themselves into the culture. Oh, and remember how we said it was kind of a party? Yeah, that part's real. While the serious construction was underway, there'd be music, dancing, and communal meals. Once the bridge was done, the whole village would feast. Guinea pigs were likely roasted. Chicha, fermented maize beer, flowed. And someone's uncle probably told that same story about the time a Spanish soldier screamed crossing the bridge in 1572. It was a celebration, but also a confirmation. Asterisk, we did this together. Here's a weird but true tidbit for your dreams tonight. Some communities actually practiced a tradition of placing miniature offerings into the ropes. Tiny figures, feathers, bones, not big flashy sacrifices, just quiet little markers, like the bridge itself was a living being, and these were its vitamins. No one's exactly sure what the purpose was. Maybe protection, maybe symbolism, but it tells you a lot about how sacred these structures were. They weren't just practical, they were spiritual lifelines. Even the timing of construction was sacred. The bridges weren't rebuilt whenever someone felt like it. Nope, there was a calendar to it, aligned with the seasons and the planting cycles. And during the reconstruction, no outsiders were allowed to cross. You waited until the work was complete, the rituals finished, the feast eaten, and then, only then, could you set foot on the freshly braided veins of the empire. But here's the kicker. The Inca didn't just build bridges asterisk between asterisk places. They built them asterisk into asterisk their identity. These were more than tools. They were testaments to community, endurance, and a kind of elegant minimalism that somehow defied the Andes themselves. So the next time you're stuck in traffic on a concrete overpass, held up by steel beams and rust, maybe spare a thought for the people who built a better bridge. With grass, no GPS, and a village full of elbow grease, you take another look at the bridge behind you, and now, knowing how it came to be, it suddenly feels less like architecture and more like a spell. Not the Harry Potter kind either. The kind where if one syllable goes wrong, the earth reclaims you with zero apology. But here's the twist in your cozy nighttime tale. This bridge isn't just physical, it's spiritual. And it's not just engineering, it's ceremony. You press your hand to one of the rail ropes and feel it again, that faint hum, almost like the thing is breathing. Not in a creepy asterisk, poltergeist asterisk way, more like a whisper of memory. And that's not an accident. Every rope bridge had a soul, literally. That's what the Inca believed. To the Inca, nature wasn't a neutral backdrop. It was alive. Mountains, rivers, stones, all pulsing with spirit. Or asterisk, huaca asterisk. And bridges, which defied death by stringing life across gorges, were part of that system. Every time a new bridge was built, the rituals weren't optional. They were structural. You're standing in the middle of one now, the highland wind brushing your cheeks, when an elder approaches you in a memory. He's holding a small clay figure. He nestles it into the fresh rope floor. Not hidden, not flaunted, just placed. Maybe it's a blessing, maybe it's a bribe. Either way, it becomes part of the bridge. Historians still argue whether these rituals were religious offerings to Pachamama, the Earth Mother, or if they were just psychological safeguards woven in to make people feel a bit safer walking across a deep, rocky hellhole. But either way, the outcome was the same. The bridge became sacred space. You don't just cross it, you asterisk enter asterisk it. And the crossing itself, that wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was a rite. You let go of one world, step into a liminal space that literally sways between life and death, and then re-emerge. Ideally, not as a pancake at the bottom of a canyon. There's an eerie moment as you look down into the chasm again. The water's so far below, it's become an abstraction, a sound more than a substance. And you remember something odd. There are old Inca tales about bridges that would mysteriously collapse the moment a trader tried to cross. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the bridge just knew. Scholars today often scoff at the supernatural side of these stories, but even they admit the timing of some collapses is asterisk, weirdly asterisk, convenient. Fringe historians love this stuff. You'll find entire papers about bridge consciousness theory, which, yes, sounds like a bad sci-fi show. But the gist is that when something is made communally, ceremonially, and cyclically, it becomes more than a thing. It becomes a being. Take that however you want. Either way, people treated it with reverence. Shoes off, heads bowed, Voices hushed. You didn't just run across an Inca rope bridge. That'd be like sprinting through someone's funeral. There's even evidence suggesting that before the first official crossing after a rebuild, a small ceremonial walk would happen. No cargo, no animals, just a slow, quiet test of respect, like waking the bridge up gently from sleep. Quirky detail. In a few areas, it's believed the rope bridge ceremonies involved dancers, yes, literal dancers, moving in choreographed steps across the new structure to bless its rhythm. Imagine ballet meets survival training, with llamas spectating, possibly judging. Now let's address the tension, no pun intended, between tradition and technique. Because yeah, these bridges were miraculous, but they also failed, sometimes violently. And when that happened, it wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spiritual rupture. Communities would mourn a failed bridge, like they mourned a family member. They'd rebuild, of course, but not without ritual cleansing, extra offerings, and sometimes blame. Maybe someone didn't fast properly. Maybe a taboo was broken. Or maybe the spirits just got bored. The science behind the actual collapse? Usually wear and tear, sometimes rot. But back then, you couldn't blame the materials. You blamed the vibe. You continue your walk across the suspended thread of civilization, feeling the subtle bounce in your step. Not unsafe, just responsive. And it hits you. This is one of the rare ancient structures that moves with you. It adapts, sways, breathes. Even stone bridges don't do that. They're rigid, cold, final. But this is alive. Which brings us to one of the most surreal aspects of Inca rope bridges. They were temporary by design asterisk, but permanent in memory asterisk. That's a strange combo. Imagine rebuilding your favorite road every year by hand, and still considering it the same road, the same identity. That's how these people saw their bridges. It wasn't about durability, it was about continuity. Kind of poetic, right? You spend months braiding your legacy into this woven miracle, knowing it'll unravel, fray, and vanish in just a year. But then you rebuild it, again and again, and somehow it's still asterisk, the same bridge asterisk, like life, or love, or maybe your sleep schedule. One last thing before we move on. The location of these bridges wasn't random. They were placed at strategic, sacred, and shockingly beautiful sites. Some near trade routes, others by temples. A few were known to have chakras, yes, actual energy centers according to some oral traditions. Again, modern historians roll their eyes. But when you're standing on a fiber lifeline between two mountains, humming in the wind like it's tuned to the planet itself, you get it. You're not just walking a bridge, you're walking a song. You finally reach the other side of the canyon. Your breath a little steadier, your feet just a little wiser. And what do you find waiting there? Not a gift shop or a victory medal, but something better. A stone path, dusty and cracked, snaking upward into the mountains. You follow it, not because you have to, but because somehow the bridge didn't just carry your body, it carried your curiosity. Welcome to the Inca road system, or as it was called, the asterisk Capic Nan, which basically translates to the Royal Road. Sounds fancy, but here's the wild part. It wasn't just one road. It was a asterisk network asterisk spanning over 24,000 miles. Yeah, that's almost the circumference of the Earth, hand-built. No bulldozers, no Google Maps, just sheer ambition, sandals, and a terrifying lack of fear. And the rope bridges? They were the arteries. Without them, this network doesn't work. You can't stitch together the jagged Andean spine with stone alone. So every time the road met a cliff, a canyon, or a frothing river channeling its inner hulk, the Inca didn't flinch. They just wove a bridge and kept going. Historians still argue whether this transportation system was more efficient than medieval Europe's roadways. And honestly, the Inca might have lapped them. These folks could send a message 150 miles in a single day. How? Relay runners? Or asterisk chasqui asterisk, who lived and breathed sprinting. Imagine a marathon relay across mountain peaks, wearing sandals, at 12,000 feet. Makes your gym membership feel kind of lazy. Now those asterisk chasquis asterisk depended on bridges. Big time. No bridge, no message. And without the message, well, Someone might miss out on the emperor's decree, or worse, a really spicy piece of gossip from Cusco. So let's talk logistics for a second. How did these runners trust the rope bridges? You might expect them to hesitate, to pause, to say a little prayer. Nah, these guys sprinted full tilt onto bridges without a second thought. Why? Because they trusted the community that built them. The rhythm, the rituals, the cycles. This wasn't some slapdash DIY project. They knew the bridge had been woven with intention, with love, with the best ichu grass this side of the equator. But you're still catching your breath, wondering how something made from dried mountain grass and elbow grease could hold the weight of an empire. It's almost annoying, isn't it? All those fancy degrees and reinforced steel bridges today, and yet this thing, this fiber hammock of doom, did the job just fine for centuries. And speaking of annoyance, let's talk about what happened when the Spanish arrived. Oh yeah, them again. When conquistadors stumbled upon the Inca rope bridges, they were not thrilled. These Europeans were used to stone arches and flat, boring roads. Their armor clanked, their horses slipped, and their fear of heights kicked in hard. There's a great historical nugget. Some Spanish officers were so terrified of the bridges that they had themselves carried across, like a baby in a panic stroller. One guy allegedly fainted mid-crossing. Can't confirm, but we can definitely picture it. Quirky tidbit for your dreams tonight. When the Spanish first tried to document these bridges, they literally didn't have the vocabulary. Rope bridge didn't cut it. They described them as hanging roads, woven air paths, or in one dramatic letter, the trembling threads of the devil. Subtle. But here's where it gets juicy. Some of these rope bridges were so crucial to travel and commerce that even the colonizers had to learn how to maintain them. Yep, after mocking the tech, they depended on it. Classic. In some cases, they even taxed local communities to rebuild them annually, the same way the Inca used to. A lot less spiritual, and a lot more do it or else. But not all bridges survived. In fact, most didn't. Over time, as roads shifted and priorities changed, the bridges fell into disuse. The rituals faded, the weavers died, and suddenly, a civilization that once stitched mountains together with grass became just another footnote in a dusty European journal. Still, a few bridges refused to die. One of them, eswachaka, in southern Peru, still gets rebuilt every year, by hand, by descendants of the same Inca communities who wove them 5 centuries ago. The process takes about 4 days. First, they gather and braid thousands of feet of fresh ichu grass. Then, they haul it across the canyon. And finally, the entire village comes together to reconstruct the bridge. It's as much festival as engineering project. And when it's done, they walk across. Kids, elders, tourists if they're brave enough. It sways, it creaks, it lives and you realize this isn't nostalgia. This is survival through tradition, culture refusing to vanish. There's something quietly profound about that. In a world that worships permanence, the Inca built with impermanence and somehow lasted longer than half the empires that mocked them. You keep climbing the stone path, the bridge now a memory behind you, but you feel it in your steps, in your spine. The give, the sway, the humility, it's not just history, it's a lesson braided into air. You reach a ridge, high above the old rope bridge now, and pause to take in the view. The wind brushes your hair, soft and thin like the fibers that once carried entire communities across death-defying gaps. The stone beneath your feet is sun-warmed and ancient, but it's that swaying bridge behind you that keeps tugging at your thoughts. There's something hauntingly beautiful about a piece of engineering that knows it's going to die, and yet gets born again, year after year. This is where things get weirdly modern, because you'd think a civilization that could build a continent-spanning road network and dangle people over gorges on literal grass would have left behind blueprints, manuals, schematics, something. But nope, not a single surviving written instruction exists for how to build these bridges. Instead, the knowledge lived in the people, not in books, but in fingers, passed down from generation to generation, like a song you only learn by humming with someone who already knows the tune. And now scholars are freaking out. They've been trying for decades to replicate Inca rope bridges using modern engineering principles, and while some have succeeded, barely. Most fall apart under stress or twist themselves into tangled nightmares. Turns out, those subtle braiding techniques, that precise way to tension the main ropes without snapping them, it's not in any textbook. It's buried in oral tradition, subtle gestures, and the rhythm of dozens of hands moving in sync. Historians still argue whether the Inca weavers understood mechanical load distribution the way modern engineers do, or whether they just learned by brutal trial and error. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, because when your life literally hangs by a thread, you learn asterisk fast. Asterisk. Here's a fun paradox for your sleepy brain. These primitive bridges, they're actually asterisk safer asterisk in certain situations than modern rigid ones. When earthquakes hit, rigid structures crack, but rope bridges, they move, they absorb, they dance with the earth instead of fighting it, which means the Inca weren't just building for function, they were building for resilience. Quirky side note, the last remaining traditional rope bridge, eswachaka, actually got its own asterisk UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage asterisk status. That's like the Oscars for ancient craftsmanship, but without the awkward speeches. It's recognition that sometimes the asterisk process asterisk is as important as the product. But even this tradition faces its own fraying edges. Each year, fewer young people in the nearby villages want to learn the craft. Smartphones have replaced grass bundles. Jeans have replaced woven tunics. The ceremony still happens, yes, but its future sways just as precariously as the bridge it celebrates. You can't help but wonder, what happens when the last person who remembers the nodding rhythm is gone? When the knowledge dissolves, not in flame or flood, but in silence? And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not the rope, not the span, but the asterisk act asterisk of remembering, of gathering, of choosing together to fight gravity with ritual. You crouch down, touching a small sprig of ichu grass growing stubbornly between two stones. You rub it between your fingers. It's coarse, golden, oddly strong, the same grass that once stretched between cliffs, that held up warriors, traders, even llamas in awkward transit. You can almost feel the pull, the tension of memory trying not to break. As the light softens and dusk wraps the valley in that hush only the Andes can summon, you finally begin to understand what these bridges really were. Not tools, not tech, not just traffic solutions. They were promises. A promise that no canyon would separate people forever. A promise that even fragile things, when woven together, can carry weight. A promise that some legacies are held not in stone, but in string. And as you begin your walk back toward the sleeping bridge, now empty, now swaying just slightly in the wind, you feel the strange calm, not the peace of arrival, but the peace of understanding, of connection, of knowing that even if the bridge disappears tomorrow, the story won't, and neither will you. So now, as your breath slows and the last strands of sunlight fade behind those ancient mountain ridges, you let the story settle. Let your body remember the gentle sway of the bridge beneath your feet. Let your mind drift back to that moment of suspended silence, halfway across a canyon, between the earth you knew and the one waiting for you. In a world obsessed with permanence, the Inca quietly taught that strength can come from impermanence, that beauty can lie in something fleeting, and that trust, once woven, can carry the heaviest of burdens. Even across the emptiest of spaces, the grass may fray, the knots may loosen, but the spirit, that lingers. In the wind that dances between cliffs, in the laughter of a child crossing for the first time, in the hands of a weaver who doesn't just make a bridge, but asterisk becomes asterisk part of it. So tonight, as you close your eyes and let sleep wrap itself gently around your thoughts, imagine one last image, a quiet gorge, moonlight glinting off the fibers of a handmade miracle. Empty, yes, but never forgotten, waiting, always, for the next traveler. The next step, the next story. Sleep well, wanderer.